Hello, we're trying this again. We're trying this for a second time, and hopefully this works. You're all still moving on my screen, so that's a good start. So once again, hello everybody. Welcome to this lovely DT2 Q&A we've got going on here. I'm your host, Mods Sarnie, and I'm joined by the wonderful Mod Arcane. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty good, thanks.
Good stuff, good stuff. Also, the lawman himself, Mod Ed. How's it going?
Hello, it's going pretty well.
Good stuff. And finally, the fantastic Mod Bruno. How's it going?
Hello. Amazing.
Amazing. Okay, excellent.
Amazing.
Why amazing, Bruno? I'm curious.
That was just great update, great quest. I did the quest myself, and it's also pretty good, yeah, from start to finish, which I hadn't fully done in test, but yeah, it was great.
Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. You guys are bigger and better questers than me. I started over the weekend, but I haven't finished it, shamefully. So, but I will very soon. Awesome. All right, I'm going to start reading from the script now because we're all in the flow of things, which is kind of nice. So, as you know, Desert Treasure 2 went out last Wednesday on July 26th, and we've been working on it for around half a year. So we're all excited when it launched. I know a lot of us were in the office, had streamers up everywhere, chilling and watching players die, and us all cheering along when those players did die. It's a good time. It's a good time. And of course, we didn't only release the quest, which came with 4 new bosses, but we also released 4 awakened versions of those bosses for only the bravest of you souls out there. It's just, I think it's been great seeing all the players enjoying the storytelling, the music, the boss mechanics, the Shadow Realm, and the unexpectedness. So we've got some Desert Treasure 2 completion data, what you've been doing so far. So can we pull that up on screen, please, production? Awesome. So yeah, as you can see, I'm not sure when this was last updated, but I think I imagine it was today, unless anyone can counter my claims. But yeah, over 65k completions of DT2, which is amazing. And I know I'm in the stragglers of some of these spare completions, but yeah, we're doing very well. How are you guys feeling about it all? We'll start with you, Bruno, first then. How are you feeling about launch and stuff?
Yeah, for numbers specifically, I always feel like it's kind of crazy, because it's like, we changed 65,000 people's weekend plans into spending at least 4 hours doing a quest, which always feels kind of weird. It's like, now that's a lot of hours. But yeah, these are huge numbers, so I'm very happy with them. It's more than I was expecting, so yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, where were you in the sweepstake, Bruno? That's the real question.
I completed it, I think it was Thursday night, so not too late into the quest, so yeah, it's not too bad.
Nice. Ed, how about you? How's it feeling, seeing all these completions and people enjoying the continuation and the martial arts storyline?
Yeah, it's like, obviously, for me, played through the quest quite a lot, and you know, there's like things like the big final cutscene and stuff like that. That hopefully, fingers crossed for these people, was super exciting. And for me, I think I must have watched that cutscene like 100 times whilst making it. So it's sort of a big sort of like when you're developing these quests, by the end of it, you kind of just feel almost nothing. It's like watching this cutscene. I'm sure it's still really cool for everyone, but for me, it's just like, well, yep, here we are at this cutscene again. So to finally have people be able to actually play through the quest and hopefully experiencing it in a bit of a different way to the way I experienced it, it's really awesome to see.
Yeah, good stuff. I remember watching, the players' reactions to the ending especially was a sight to see, especially something we've been working on for a very, very long time. So on to you finally, Mod Arcane. How are you feeling about everything? I'm sure I saw you in the office watching all the different streamers taking on all the different bosses. So how's it feel?
Yeah, I was really glued in. I think I had like 12 streams open at one point, just watching everyone go through the quests and the bosses and everything. And I think watching Wooks and Bowie die to Vardorvis like day one, that was a success in my books. And just watching people fall over. It was good fun. I can relate as well with the people struggling to get through Lasar, going by these numbers. I watched a friend go through Lasar and get very, very frustrated not understanding Shadowrun properly, so that was a good times. I'm sure he'll go when Quest Helper comes out, he'll go back.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. Yeah, I don't think I actually saw you sit down once once a update went live, to be honest. I saw you like pinging about between all the different screens, just keeping an eye on everything. It was good fun. Yeah, awesome. So not only that, like I said, we released some Awakened variants, and we've actually got the first 10 players to have completed the Awakened bosses. So here we go. So a big shout out to the first 10 players. So everybody on this list has secured themselves some Blood Torva, which very nice looking cosmetic upgrade.
These streams were so fun to watch. I think I literally spent the entire afternoon and night from like 2 o'clock till 11 just watching like 4 or 5 people going through these. It was so entertaining.
Yeah, how was it just seeing the reaction then, Arcane, overall? Just was it as expected, or were you a bit nervous before?
I was really nervous about the Awakened bosses because I know I worked on Fosanis, which I think most people quite liked about it. And then I worked on top hard mode, which I think was a bit of a letdown compared to some expectations. And obviously, Chambers of Xeric had a bit of a wish-wash reception for the challenge mode. So it was like, can we do a hard mode boss that's like actually interesting and exciting? Because just making everything attack faster and hit harder isn't that good. But then we don't want to spend loads of time on it when we could have just developed another boss, right? Like, if you spend so much time like just trying to make Leviathan hard mode better, then you might as well have just made another boss in the end of the day. So I was a bit nervous about it, but it seemed like people had fun and people had a good amount of challenge with it. And some people have gone back to start farming them over and over again just for the fun of it. But as much as some people dislike the Awakened Orb system, like the memes in like Twitch chat where it's like every time the streamer would die and it's just like -1 orb. Minus 2.5 mil. It's just so funny. Like, I loved it.
Yeah, that clip of Nox appearing after Sync died was had me crackling up.
It's the best clip of all time.
Not only did he Tom and Jerry scream, but it was the fact Nox was straight thereafter to mock him, which was beautiful. Yeah, Bruno, I don't know if you had any thoughts on the Awakened bosses and how that's gone.
Yeah, pretty much what Arcane said. It's really cool to see everyone jump in. It was kind of like what we were told would be the Inferno release, where everyone was just doing the same content and it was like really tense and everyone wanted to be first. But yeah, it was awesome to see Sync do it first.
Awesome stuff, awesome stuff. And Ed, how did you feel when the Awakened bosses dropped? Which on a Friday as well, which I feel helped the hype. Like just sort of not out of nowhere, but we sort of hinted towards it, but sort of not prepped like a normal game update. So
yeah, but very I say very last minute, like sort of semi last minute. We were sort of like, right, we're going to enable these. How do we let people know? So very last minute, we decided to add a little teaser for anyone who had one of the orbs. A little so just very quickly at the last minute, it's like, oh, how can we hotfix something into the game to sort of like add a fun little teaser for everyone? So that was quite fun.
It certainly was. It certainly was. Right, I think I've rambled enough, especially now I'm connected. So I'm going to go through some announcements and then we'll get to the bulk of why we're here, which is a Q&A about DT2. So first up, ! Game update. Desert Treasure 2, The Fallen Empire is finally here. The biggest and most ambitious quest to date is now live. You can head over to the Ancient Vault northeast of Nada to get started, as long as you meet the requirements. You can see the full details with that command. ! Video, we partnered with the Smooth Tones of Poison Potion to give you a lore recap about Desert Treasure 2, so you can find out more about Zaros and Majra in this video. ! Rings. If you didn't catch a previous live stream, which was last week, which was sailing, Modaiza jumped in and explained how the DT2 ring drops worked, so you can use that command to check that out. And finally, ! Roadmap. We just updated the roadmap with Deadman Apocalypse release date for those of you want to put time aside to play following the initial launch weekend to save the date of August 25th. Awesome. All right, with that out the way, let's just jump into some questions. All right, first up then, how do you come up with puzzles for quests? Are there certain inspirations you draw from?
I mean, yeah, like the inspirations are obviously old school RuneScape. It's a bit of an old game, so a lot of the inspirations are probably like older games, sort of very like I guess what were sort of like the games that were big sort of back in those days. So people probably see quite often the lot of Resident Evil inspirations, particularly the early Resident Evil games, in a lot of quest puzzles we do, particularly in this one. I think more so than any other with like the Gorok section and stuff like that. What other like we do just steal a lot from the games, to be honest. That's sort of like the short answer here, but like that's the Old Republic. That's one we steal from a lot for quest stuff. I'll be honest. I shouldn't use the word steal, should I? Should I take inspiration from? We looked to a few more like modern games as well. Sometimes I think it's fair to say that people probably noticed a lot of Souls influences in this quest as well. So we do sometimes take inspiration from, not steal from more modern games too. And I guess probably the biggest one is just RuneScape itself. Like we've got a very big game, lots of old quests. We look back at old quests and sort of things they were doing, and like how can we sort of expand upon that for puzzles. I think it's not just for puzzles, for everything in the quest. In some cases it's wow, that was great, can we make an even better version of it? In other cases it may be that wasn't so great, can we make a good version of it?
Definitely no stealing here, but a lot of inspiration, I would say, from various sources, and not even just games, I suppose, just general themings and stuff. Probably a variety of media and things throughout everywhere, I suppose. Was there out of interest, Ed, is there a puzzle specifically you enjoyed the most working on, or that seeing players struggle through, I suppose?
There's definitely all the Lassar stuff. The realm switching is something that I've wanted to do for a quest for a very long time, and the actual like original idea for it was something very, very different, which I'll not go into too much detail on, just in case we do one day end up doing it. But basically, the short of it is it involved time travel rather than two different realms. But then in the end, when coming to design Desert Treasure 2, like when you were going to have a shadow boss, wanted to do more stuff with the Shadow Realm than ever before. It was just like it was too good an opportunity to pass up. So that sort of that time travel puzzle got re-pivoted into two different realms, Shadow Realm and Normal Realm instead, and that was the most fun to implement, definitely. And then quite enjoyable, yeah, watching people hopefully not get too frustrated with it.
Not too frustrated, but I imagine the most frustrated out of all the 4 areas, I imagine, considering the completions we've seen.
One of the nice things is that I think it one thing we were seeing a lot on like both feedback and in the completions is that each area sort of appealed to different people. Like there were some people going, "Oh wow, the Lassar section was great, 10 out of 10, loved it." Then in the comments I'd be like, "Nah, mate, the Lassar section was absolutely crap. What are you on about? I absolutely loved the Stranglewood section instead." Like it was really nice to see that each of the 4 areas did like something different for different people, and that even if you didn't like one, there's a good chance you probably liked a different one. So yeah, even if you didn't like Lassar, I think there's probably still hopefully quite a few people that did.
I mean, from the completions and the comments I saw, Ed, I would say so. All right, next question then. Has the positive reception for DT2 motivated the team to potentially increase the priority of new Grandmaster quest updates for the roadmap, or is the team happy with the current amount we are getting?
Well, that's a big question, and to be honest, not really a question for us. How things get prioritized and resources is a question for the powers that be. But I guess we can sort of like talk about it a little bit, I suppose, and then said powers that be will might get very upset that Ed may be promising or not promising things on a live stream. But I think one of the things to know is like grandmaster quests. They are they're awesome. They're big and expensive, and in the time it takes to make one grandmaster quest, you can make quite a few smaller quests. So it's always a balancing act, especially with like how many storylines are currently unfinished. If we go all in on grandmaster quests, even if we increase the budget towards quests dramatically, like, would that be leaving enough time for the others? I know it's been quite a few years since we last did one, and I do personally think that the balance was wrong there. Like, turns out I didn't even realise that Song of the Elves celebrated its 4th birthday the day before DT2 launched, and I think 4 years between grandmaster quests. I do think that is too much, and we should have done one sooner. But at the same time, like, don't want to increase the pace we do them too much, because it's important to have variety, important to do other things, important to do smaller quests and other content that isn't quests. So yeah, that's sort of my cheat answer. Without, like, again, I cannot really say whether there's a desire to increase doing grandmaster quests, because it wouldn't be my call. But I certainly wouldn't complain if the powers that be decide to do a few more quests here and there.
Yeah, I don't think most people complain, to be honest. Even if those players are spacebarring through them, I think players do generally like quests, and it's quite, I would say, iconic, especially old school or RuneScape in general. Questing is quite different to a lot of other MMOs out there. And stands on its own, I think. So yeah, I would hope so anyway. All right, next question. We'll head over to something about the bosses then. So do you guys think the difficulty of the bosses is where you wanted it to be, or do you think some changes need to be made?
At least post quest.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Bruno.
No, you'd have a better answer.
Sure. At least post quest, I'm pretty happy with most of them. I think there's a couple of them that got like slightly buggy behavior, and I'd like to try and fix them in ways that aren't intrusive to like current matters, like how people are actually killing the bosses. They just maybe look a little bit weird. I know an example of that is Vardorvis. A lot of people are killing him by standing in a cardinal direction on like the middle tile of like between two pillars, and he'll do his dash attack, but he won't spawn any spikes. I don't want to change that so then he'll all of a sudden start spawning spikes underneath you, but it feels a little stupid that he's doing his dash attack and not spawning anything. So I think at least spawning one would look okay and just make it feel not buggy. But apart from that, I don't know, I think the fights are in a really good spot. I don't know if you got any other perspective for the quest versions, Ed?
I did. It's fair to say there has been a fair few people coming out and going, Jagex, this is too hard. The quest bosses are way too hard. I'm never going to do them. Like, nope, I'm out. And I don't know, it's a very delicate balance, I think, because you see it debated sometimes, like when it comes to the quest point cape, like should the quest point cape get more difficult to obtain or re-obtain over time? And my personal take on it is yes, absolutely, because otherwise there is a ceiling there on what we can do with quest content that it would just limit us too much. And when you think about it, you think back to the original Desert Treasure, those Desert Treasure 1 bosses, you play through today, even if you're not a particularly experienced PvM, you play through them today, let's be honest, they're not particularly challenging. But back then they were. People's skill changes over time, not just their skill, but also we're cautious of power creep, but it does still exist. Slowly over time, new weapons and abilities and stuff like that come into the game that can change how you interact with content. And so I do think it's important that we're suitable, up the difficulty of things a bit. And it was always an expectation that the bosses from DT2 would be up there when it came to quest difficulty. Personally, I don't think they're as big a jump as some people are claiming them to be. On a stats level, they're actually significantly weaker than other Grandmaster Quest bosses. They've got lower hit points, quite often lower accuracy, lower defenses. The thing that's really changed here is that they're more mechanically difficult than any quest boss we've done so far. But I think what that means is that there's learning opportunities there. These quests, the Grandmaster quests, have the potential to be like gateways towards higher end PVM piece of content. They can introduce you to concepts that you can then experience in other pieces of content and, dare I say, maybe even enjoy it. So, no, I don't think they're a million miles off, to be honest. And I think I don't want to be too rude, but I'd say for people who think this is maybe a leap too far, it's like just keep at it. I'm not going to say they're definitely spot on. I'm not going to guarantee we're not going to make any changes. It's always possible that we might continue to look at it and we might make a few tweaks, but at least they don't seem a million miles off. So keep at it. You will get there. I'll be positive. I was like saying, how would I not be real? I'll be positive instead. I'll encourage people. It's like I do think that these quest bosses for the kind of target audience, people who are doing Grandmaster quests, I do think these are. You can kill them. You can do it. It just might take a few more attempts than maybe previous quest bosses.
Yeah, I will say you definitely took a more diplomatic approach to that answer, Ed, than the chat did. So thank you for that.
It was on my lips. I was going to say get good, and I was like, no. I've got to be nice.
Bruno, any follow-up thoughts then?
Yeah, what Ed said. It's a very polite way to say skill issue, but I think the bosses are definitely doable if you stick to your guns and carry on doing it. I think you can definitely get it at the end of the day. But yeah, the post-quest bosses, they might not be as doable if you're struggling with the quest versions, but you only have to do the quest versions once, so just struggle through it, eat as many anglerfish as you can definitely do it.
Agreed. It will feel great once you do it as well. After a couple tries, several tries, once you do it, that elation you'll get is fantastic. So yeah, keep at it. You got this. You got this. All right. The next question we've got is: the rewards after completing this quest are very lackluster. Do you guys plan on retroactively adding more rewards to this quest since ancient prayers were scrapped?
Lackluster is such a harsh word, but I get it. I get it. We were considering prayers. We dropped the prayers. It's always going to feel a bit. It's going to feel a bit crap, that sort of thing. But I don't think it's actually as bad as it first seems. 4 bosses from one quest is pretty massive, and when you look at other Grandmaster quests, the other Grandmaster quests don't actually unlock that much on quest completion. They're actually in a very sort of similar state where most of what they unlock is content to engage with after the quest. So I don't think it's necessarily as bad as some people are maybe suggesting it is, but at the same time, totally understand that when there was these cool shiny prayers sat there and then suddenly they weren't anymore, it's always going to feel a bit, it's going to. I nearly swore there. I shouldn't swear on a Jagex live stream. Crap. I'll use that word. That's a borderline swear. It's going to feel a bit crap. Totally, I totally get that. And when you look at other Grandmaster quests, they've gained rewards over time, and it's almost definite that Desert Treasure 2 will. For a start, we've added 4 big new areas. Right now, I've just got the bosses in. There's so many opportunities there to add new content there. And as for prayers themselves, it was. We shouldn't put something in game if it's going to be crap. I'm treading on thin ice here because, we shouldn't even poll something if we know it is not going to work out. And those prayers, they just weren't going to work. So I do think it was the right thing to do to get rid of them. That said, I'm not giving up on prayers personally. There's been some great suggestions both from within the team and from the community as well on what we could do differently with prayers. And personally, my hope is that one day some form of Zerosian prayers rear their head again, but it definitely won't be in the form that we were polling before.
Yep, Well said, well said. Any further insight from you, Bruno or Arcane?
No, not really.
Alright, awesome, awesome. Alright, cool, thank you for that, Ed. Alright, next question is, how open are you guys to buffing the Soulreaper Axe? General sentiment right now is that it is very underwhelming for how difficult it is to obtain.
It is difficult
What are you on
to
about? I
obtain
saw it
without
hitting
a chunk of
500s at the
time.
weekend.
That, yeah. That being said, I
Yeah, I was
also
gonna
think
say
it's better to wait a little bit more time so there's more in the game and more people can like try them out and see if they actually are very weak or not strong enough. Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
There's also kind of no room to buff it. If it's buffed like anymore, then it's just better than Scythe. So like, it is definitely strong, but I agree it's quite hard to get right now because not very many people are killing all the bosses like as an individual. But that'll change over time. I think it's quite cool that we have like quest bosses that have an almost max cash item behind them, based purely off the drop mechanics. Like that's actually quite exciting and motivating. If you push for all of your pieces, you're gonna make a lot of money. Usually that's just reserved for raids.
Yeah, it's very true. I'm curious. We don't actually put the names of people who put questions in here anymore, which I feel like is a bit of a shame because I'd like to see who actually wrote underwhelming and see if I can weed them out in the chat. To be honest, but I'll move on from that. I'll move them on. All right. Bruno, are you gonna say something about the Soul Reaper? Or...
Oh no, I was thinking if they are maybe merching Soul Reaper axes, like they'd have to be already very rich. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. All right. Next question is: going forward, how does the team feel about adding the new drop system into current and future bosses?
This is obviously like quite a big topic, and we kind of talked about it on the last live stream on Thursday or Friday. I can't remember. But I think the new system that the Rings has so much potential for the future because no one likes going dry, and this is what I think is quite an elegant way of doing it without devaluing like the feeling of getting a drop. Like imagine if Twisted Bow was broken up into shards, like you got what is 10 times more common, but you needed to get it 10 times, right? You just wouldn't feel as good. Like you getting like those shards, it's just not as exciting. So then this is a way of kind of doing that. I'm not saying how it's implemented right now is perfect. I think there should definitely be solutions that we can do that kind of benefit both ends. I know there's been some valid criticism about like day one feedback about like release day feedback in terms of it's not as exciting when you feel like you can't realistically get the drop like day one. And I think we can address that really easily just by having like a 4 or 5 times rarer version that you can just get all in one go. But there's also a bunch of other smart like things we can do behind the scenes to effectively fix all of these things. But I think some sort of bad luck mitigation is good. Let's try and see if we can come up with an iteration that doesn't have the negatives alongside it, really. I think people generally see the benefits of it, so it's just about iterating and making it better, right? That's kind of why we tried this out, because we want to see what people think, because it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, very well said, Arcane. I'm curious in chat because I saw quite a mixed response. If someone could put a poll up in chat, I'd be keen to see who is yay and who is nay, to be honest. So if someone behind the scenes could sort that out, that'd be amazing. No one's got anything else, then we'll go on while that poll's being set up. Cool. All right. What's the team's self-evaluation of the content as a whole, both quest and bosses? I know we sort of touched on that briefly at the beginning, but we can run over it again quickly, I suppose. Should we start with you, Bruno?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I've already said this, but yeah, overall very happy with it. On the release, I was honestly looking more at the quest than the bosses because we spent so long testing and working on the bosses that we're already kind of like confident with thinking, yeah, these are going to be fine. Like we had playtesters come in twice just to test out the bosses exclusively. They didn't touch anything to the quest, and they all thought it was pretty good. We made some more improvements, so I think they would be even happier with that. But yeah, overall great.
Awesome stuff. All right, Ed, what about yourself?
So no, really, it's hard to evaluate your own work, isn't it? I mean, that's probably for the best. It probably should be probably come across a bit arrogant. You're like, oh yeah, that was a great quest. As I was saying earlier, I think especially like developing this quest, like it's not the same as playing through it. Like seeing some of those cutscenes like hundreds, if not more times, like puzzles and stuff like that, dialogues, reading through it over and over again. By the end of it, like the feeling is just sort of like almost nothingness. So like just have no feelings on this piece of content whatsoever. But also people have been saying lots of nice things, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we made something good. They're enjoying the quest. It certainly seems like people are. But yeah, it's really hard for me personally to really have an opinion, especially this soon afterwards. Like maybe in a year's time, once I've gotten over the horror of watching those cutscenes hundreds of times, I'll be able to form a better opinion. But yeah, for now, I just sort of very much have to rely on what other people are saying, what other people are thinking, and hope that they're right.
Well, rather than tooting your own horn, Ed, I'll toot it for you. So you did a great job. Personally, from my personal experience, you did a great job. Arcane, should we throw it over to you then for the final self-evaluation?
I mean, I think it's gone down really well. It seems like people really enjoyed the quest, and everyone's got their favorite boss. Obviously, people argue about like, oh no, this boss is better. No, this one's bad. Like, but I think everyone has a boss in this update that they really like. I know Duke is a fan favorite for people to dislike prep, but people really like that boss as well. It's actually really popular at the same front. It's just that people that dislike the prep of that boss really, really dislike the prep of that boss. Which is fair, right? I think that's fine. Everyone can have something they like and dislike. Yeah, I think the update's gone down really, really well. I'm quite happy with it.
Yeah, I think chat can agree. I've seen a lot of support. Even just this, I mean, across socials, I've seen massive love for the quests and the bosses and everything. And yeah, I hope players will agree. We did pretty well, I would say. So yeah, good job, guys. Good job. All right, next question we've got. Hard mode TOB, TOA's invocation system, and now the awakened versions of the bosses seem to be different and unique ways of adding challenges for players who want to push the gameplay further. What's the team learned from implementing these modes? Do you think they're good for the game?
Yeah, I've been part of quite a few of these updates now. I feel like the TOA invocation system's like a bit different, but in terms of like typical hard mode content, like Phosani's hard mode TOB, CM Cox, and now these awakened bosses. Like I know when I went into hard mode, or Phosani's Nightmare is very much just kind of like, okay, let's see if I can make a version of Phosani's Nightmare that, in my mind, just kind of fixes a lot of the issues that the boss had, like the base boss, but then that had to kind of go solo because it's just a lot simpler if you do that. So I think that's a lot simpler, but then for hard mode TOB, there's a lot of expectations and a lot of complaints about how CM Cox just increased a bunch of stats. So then, like, we avoided changing the stats like the plague. So, like, our players really don't like us changing stats, so let's not do that. But then there was feedback of the hard mode TOB basically just being like, okay, well, they probably should have had, a bit more health, a bit more defense, a bit more damage. Like, feel like they're a bit of a step up. I'm not saying 50% defense like CM Cox, right, but a bit of a step up. And I feel like I did take a lot of that feedback for these Awakened bosses and try to have a mix of both, where it's like mechanical changes as well as stat changes, whether that's just making things hit harder or attack faster or whatever. So I don't know. I feel like this is the best iteration like I've personally implemented or like worked on. There's obviously room for improvement, but I think I'm at least myself just getting more confident about like what does like difficult content even look like, because I think difficulty in RuneScape is very subjective as well. So it's been a learning process, but it seems like people enjoy this.
Some stuff, yeah. It's always a big discussion. Difficulty and player journey, like where a player is in terms of early, mid, late, and like end game, I think is always a I wouldn't say a hot debate, but a constant debate players have. So yeah. Alright, awesome. Next up, more DC2 boss stuff. What did you learn from the design of the DT2 bosses? What influenced you, and most importantly, how will it affect future boss designs?
I'm not really
One thing
sure
I'll
how
quickly
to,
say
clockwise.
is I really liked the quick time event on Vardorvis where you like click to get rid of the little blood splats. That was really cool. It'd be nice if you like did something not the same for like every boss, but maybe every so often like something like that.
Yeah, that was definitely probably the most different mechanic that we've done before. We've never had like a in-combat interface mechanic, really. Usually it's just click boss, so it seems like that was well received. That was something we were really nervous about as well for a long time, since it was so different, and we had a lot of players come in and play test them, and they seemed to really like it, so we pushed for it. So we can definitely mess around with things like that in the future. It doesn't have to just be clicking as well, right? We could make it so your mouse movement matters. Things like that. There's a lot we can explore there if people like it. But it's just doing it in the right way, right? In terms of just like general design for DT2 bosses, I think the main thing we wanted is just to make sure all 4 bosses felt distinct, like quite unique. And I do think we succeeded on that front. In terms of affecting future boss designs, I think the biggest thing that I've learned most recently is I think chip damage is fine as long as you can like heal up without losing DPS, and like that's as simple as it is. And that might sound really dumb on paper, but like chip damage is important to our game because otherwise food kind of is irrelevant. We need food to be relevant in an MMORPG, otherwise like the game kind of falls apart in different ways. Like imagine if entire skill just had no use whatsoever, like fire making. Like there's obviously complaints there. So we need to make sure all of our skills actually have purpose. But chip damage, where like you just take a bunch of damage and then you just have to sit there eating food. I think Mod Husky put this down really well, where healing in RuneScape is just really not fun. Like chip damage is fine if healing's fun. Like if healing isn't a pain, then chip damage doesn't really matter. But in RuneScape, every time you gotta heal, you're losing damage, and no one really likes to lose damage. So then most bosses get around this. Like chip damage in Forecast doesn't generally feel that bad because he has the phases that innately mean you can eat up between. You know, when you kill the spawn, you have a bit of downtime, or you can eat some food. Like there's like natural parts of the fight where you can eat up, so it doesn't feel like you're losing DPS. I think that's something we need to be a lot more mindful of, and just make sure there are natural points during a fight where you can just eat up and you're not losing DPS, right? Because otherwise it is really intrusive. Like Nex is like probably the most intrusive version of that mechanic, right? Like you're constantly just taking damage and eating and hoping it doesn't hit more than you can heal. That's where people feel it a lot. And that's where you feel like you have to use brews then, right? And we don't have overloads, so brews aren't perfect either. Yeah, I think for me that's the biggest thing, where we just need to be really mindful of that kind of stuff. But in general, yeah, try and make things feel unique, try and make new mechanics. As always, every boss has that, right? Where you want to come up with something new. You want a new gimmick for it. You want bosses to feel unique and distinct from each other.
Yeah, I mean, I really am enjoying, personally, seeing a more like mechanics-based front to bossing as well, which has been really interesting, especially over the last couple of years. Bruno or Ed, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts regarding that?
I think Arcane covered it.
Saw Ed quickly shake his head. This isn't his remit. This isn't his remit. All right, next question. Any thoughts on implementing an indicator when a player hits the ring roll?
I think that kind of defeats the point of what we were trying to accomplish. Like we could have just done something like the Venator shard system, right? Where you need to get 5 1 in 100s to then combine them to make the item, instead of just having the bow drop 1 in 500. Maybe people just rather have shard systems, and that's fine. We can go for that, right? But I do think you do lose a bit of magic where you just get the drop. Like it makes the individual drop just so much less exciting. But and like, drop tables can take that into consideration as well, right? Like I think it's important as a player you get something for your time. Like it sucks to like imagine there's only one drop on the entire Chambers' Arc table, and it was a twisted bow, and it was a 1 in 1,000. Like you're spending day after day, night after night, not getting anything. That'd be really, really boring. So I think you need to make sure the players kind of you're getting something, right? And this drop table has Veritas and the shards, and obviously you have your teleport tablet for your first bit of KC. Like there's quite a lot of small things on there, chromium ingots and stuff. So you feel like you're getting something for your time, and then you get the big drop. And the big drop just makes it all feel worth it. We can definitely separate that up into like we could have 100 blood ring shards or whatever, right? Ultar ring shards, and you get one shard every like 20 kills or whatever. And it's like just not as exciting, like as getting like the big drop. So this is kind of what this implementation was trying to get around. So we constrain the RNG in the same way as the Venator shard system, but you still get the big drop. You still get the big exciting stuff. Like we were saying before, there might be things we can do to kind of have both, really.
Yeah, I will say, just for anyone who did miss it, the poll did finish that we put in chat. And even though dislike came out as the top single option, 43% of you voted dislike, which means 57% of you voted for like with in any form. So actually, the likes won in this case. So
it's clearly divisive, right?
Yeah, exactly. Clearly divisive. Yeah, but I think it's a good experiment regardless. I think it was a good thing to try. So, cool. All right. Next question then. OSRS went from having 2 bosses with Enrage phases to having 12 in the span of 3 years. Is it just me, or is this mechanic just being too overplayed recently?
I wouldn't really call it a mechanic. Like the boss like goes into an Enrage phase and maybe gains mechanics, or the mechanics change, but I wouldn't really call an Enrage phase a mechanic in itself. I know some people are calling like the last 33% of Vardorvis' health an Enrage mechanic, but like it's just the fight gets a bit faster. Like it's a lot different to like Phosani's Nightmare, where it very clearly, like gains some health back and then a different part of the fight starts. Like that's a very defined Enrage mechanic. I don't think we've done too many of those, personally. I think Whisper is the only one. I mean, Whisper and Leviathan kind of have it. Vardorvis and Duke don't have it. Muspah kind of has it. So, like, yeah, we have them every now and again. I think they're a lot more interesting. I think you generally want, like, if you could, like, map out a player intensity during a fight, you kind of want the intensity to go up towards the end, and then you get the big relief once you kill the boss, and then maybe you get the drop. I think that's generally just feels fun and feels good. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think people have generally enjoyed this. In terms of overplaying it, potentially, but in this update, it was half the bosses did, half the bosses didn't, so not particularly. Oh no, keep it in mind, I guess.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Arcane. Alright, let's talk about Blood Torva next. The unlock for Blood Torva is great and challenging. Were there any other ideas floating around for how Blood Torva would be unlocked, or was this the method, the initial plan?
It definitely wasn't the plan. It was quite a last minute addition. We were obviously focusing on the update, and then we basically had an extra week lying around, and we're like, can we do something with this? So obviously we whipped up the blog really quickly and got it to the players, tried to pull it immediately, so then we could actually get it out there. Didn't take too much development either. Like there obviously wasn't any new assets or anything for it, so it was mainly just changing numbers and playtesting it. Really, it was most of the time. The initial idea was to just do kind of like a round trip of like you killed each boss once, like without banking or something like that, because that would be a bit of a challenge in itself, because you would need 3 gear sets and resources obviously matter. So that was like a timid way of doing it, but then we were like, okay, we've got a bit of time, can we push this a bit harder? And I think we did.
Cool, awesome. Alright, this next question is for Ed specifically, and says, I'm not going to ask Ed to make Ritual the Margaret. I will ask Jagex to lock him in a room with coffee, pen, and paper. When can we expect to see results? Also, while Gothic sleeps.
With coffee, pen, and paper, be disastrous. I don't drink coffee, and I'm terrible actually with pen and paper. Like 21st century, I type things.
What would be your go-to
wait,
in terms of drink?
for
If you were...
that depends what time of day it is.
Well, yeah, fair play, fair play.
When can you switch to your results though? Well, hopefully without locking me in a room. Depends what your definition of soon is. Like, let's not make any too drastic promises. Like, realistically, this is not a storyline that's getting finished, next week sort of thing. But we want to finish it. We want to finish all our storylines, and the Marjarat is sort of like, when you think of storylines in RuneScape, the Marjarat is kind of the big one, and it's the one we, now that we've started, we do want to sort of like keep focusing on. But it's it's important to not forget about the other storylines. Like, and that was something that was made very clear to us when we did the narrative survey recently. Like, we actually asked about like sort of what strategy should we take when it comes to continuing storylines, and the result was sort of very clear of keep the variety, don't start focusing on just one at a time. So like make sure there's always a couple like getting updated at once. And while that that does inevitably mean that all of them will take longer to reach completion when we did it one at a time, it means that variety is always there. And like after having done 2 Marjarat quests in a row, expect the next couple of quests to be from different storylines. But that said, we don't want to just release Desert Treasure 2, everyone's really excited, and then just not talk about it for the next 5 years. We are keen to move a bit faster on this one. So again, comes back to definition of soon, is not never, but not this year either. It's also like there's a lot more quests that need doing for the Marjarats. If we went straight into our finale after Desert Treasure 2, we wouldn't be doing a storyline justice. There's a lot more quests that need to happen. Like, we've brought some areas of the Marjarat storyline up to a point now where they're ready for the finale. Like, what's happened in this quest, it's sort of like setting one side of the storyline up ready for the finale. But there's other Marjarat, like Lucian's story needs continuing. Zemarigal hasn't even been like seen in Old School yet. There's other Marjarat as well that have not been seen. Like, we need to do quests for them as well first before we get there. So there's a fair few more quests in it. There's a bit longer to wait, but we're already thinking about it, and we don't want to drag this one out forever.
Thank you very much, Ed. I feel like any question that comes up, Ed, especially in the lore live streams we've done, that question sort of always crops up, is like, when is X storyline going to finish? So I feel like you get a chance to answer that every stream.
I am very keen to start concluding some of these storylines. Like, we do have way too many that are just, ongoing. Like, I think there's something like nearly 20 or so storylines that are on the go at the moment. I'm very keen to start wrapping some of those up, but it is so important that they not be rushed. Like, I saw a few people saying, "Oh, they're really disappointed that Desert Treasure 2 wasn't a Marjarat finale." Like, I'll apologize for many things I've done to this game. Like, but not going to apologize for that one. Like, if Desert Treasure 2 had been the finale for Marjarat storyline, we would not have done that story justice even remotely. Like, we need to give each storyline the time it needs and the amount of quests it needs. In some cases, I think there's a couple of storylines that only need one more now. Quite keen to jump on those ones and get those finished, but there are some storylines, and Marjarat is one of them, where I think we actually sort of like work it out because we do have a rough plan. I think it's like it needs 5 more quests or something like that. And that's not. I should clarify, that's not 5 more Desert Treasure 2s. Don't expect 5 more grandmasters. Because the Marjarat storyline isn't particularly linear like the other storylines. It's going to be a mixture. So it's, again, going back to, I guess, the original question, like, it's not going to take forever. We're not going to be doing like 5 more grandmasters, or one every 4 years sort of thing, and we'll all be going grey by the time we get to the end. It should hopefully feel like it picks up a bit here.
Awesome, thank you very much, Ed. All right, next question is, what are your thoughts on the various strategies people have come up with for the bosses. Did anything stand out? Like, wow, that's so cool. We didn't think you'd do that.
It's a good question. I guess Wooks walking. Like, we figured out you can kind of Wooks walk on the Leviathan, like lightning special attack. We didn't kind of figure out how you could attack and Wooks walk. So it was cool to see that someone figured that out. Some things we kind of already knew they were going to be a thing. Like, we specifically made it so you could tick manip the mushroom and stuff like that at the juke. But yeah, some of the things are like pretty interesting how they come about.
Awesome. Any other surprises from anyone else, or?
I knew you'd be able to jump through the axes of Vardorvis. I didn't realize like how comfortable it would be, like as a main mechanic. I thought it'd be like a nice option as opposed to like the main way people are using actually dodging the axes. I guess I just didn't think people would actually be comfortable with like virtually tick perfects, doing tick perfect movement over and over and over again, en masse as well, which is actually quite surprising. Yeah, I knew it was possible because the originally actually lingered, similar to like Hallowed Sepulchre, where you like wouldn't be able to run through them or anything. It was just really, really annoying, so I removed it. And yeah, I think it's pretty cool how people are fighting these bosses now.
Cool, awesome. All right. Next question we've got. Just curious why Vardorvis is an undead vampire, but both Salve doesn't work and it doesn't count as a vampire on a Slayer task.
You ready to get Lord?
Always, Ed. Always.
Okay, admittedly, like it is a bit of a grey area, but you're kind of not really fighting an undead vampire. Like the thing you are fighting is for Strangler, which is neither vampire nor dead. You know, it's a living plant basically. So like it's just using Vardorvis's body as a weapon, basically, kind of thing. So he's not really undead in that sense, and he's like, I guess not really a vampire anymore. So that's sort of like that's the answer. Again, admittedly, like obviously there's some grey area here of like what you define as undead, but yeah.
Could you imagine if he was a vampire and you had to use the Blisterwood Flail? Like that'd be absolutely miserable.
Yeah, we slap out a Sins of the Father requirement as well. Huge requirements for these bosses.
Please don't. Just to clarify, please don't, guys. All right. Any thoughts on Awakened Orbs, gatekeeping Ironmen from fighting the Awakened variants? Will Iron simply have to grind thousands of normal boss KCs to try the Awakened versions?
This, alongside the rest of the drop table, will be reviewed in like the upcoming weeks. Like we do plan to reveal the drop table and like how it works and all the rates and stuff next week. And we'll review them at the same time, right? If we think things are too rare or too common in either direction, we'll make changes. Personally, I think you should get a decent handful of Awakened Orbs from finishing all of your rings to give you a very solid chance of completing all these bosses. If you don't complete them with many KC, then similarly to every other resource in the game, you'd have to grind for more. I appreciate this feels a little different than just grinding for herbs or something like that, because it's like a new skill-based encounter, but Ironman already has a lot of benefits for like playing a main and being better than other people, right? Like if you're playing an Ironman and you practice Zora on a main account, you're going to be able to get better kills per hour than someone who's new to it. You're not going to be wasting a lot of time early on. You're going to be more efficient about it. It's the same with every other boss. So, I don't know. For me, it doesn't feel much different than the rest of the Ironman game mode. This doesn't feel like much of an outlier.
It also doesn't feel as big of a deal, because the only thing you're unlocking is a cosmetic version to an item which not very Ironmen have anyway. Or if this unlocked like an actual useful item, then yeah, maybe we'd be more lenient on it. But yeah, as it stands right now, we'll review it soon-ish.
Yep, I think that's a fair response, guys. Thank you. Alright, next question is, thoughts on making the Awakened versions not require an orb after finishing Blood Torva? The bosses are great, there's just no incentive to go back after the completion, and the orbs being so expensive makes it completely unviable to do more kills or speedrun it.
I sympathize with the speedrunning aspects of it, but I think speedrunning in our game is just kind of awkward in general. I know I've proposed it a couple of times. I don't know if I proposed it on stream or not, but like repurposing the speedrunning worlds to actually be a bit more encompassing and support a lot more stuff, I think could actually benefit that scene quite a lot. Like being able to speedrun anything on there with any setup and customize stuff, blah blah. Like I know Zuck obviously comes up very often, speedrunning the Inferno. Being able to just do that over and over again, I think would actually help the scene a lot. Because yeah, speedrunning shouldn't really be gated by a lot of this stuff, but then I don't really like the idea of making main game changes just to facilitate speedrunning. So I think speedrunning worlds kind of help that a lot. Like they get around that. But that's just my take. I'm not speaking on behalf of the entire team there.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Arcane. I appreciate that insight. All right, next question then. Is there a feeling from the team about trying to find a bit of middle ground between the guaranteed profit of bosses like Muspah and the current drop tables? I think most agree that not every boss needs high profit on every kill, but with the rarity of uniques, it might sweeten the deal for those setting in on the long grind for the tables to be adjusted upwards a bit.
I think every boss needs to be worth your time. And that's obviously subjective for every player in every different situation and different parts of the game. I think in an ideal world, every boss just had its specific unique on and maybe some supply drops or something like that, and the GP per hour was purely gated by how many uniques were on that boss. Or like the unique price line, the demand for that unique effectively. So you imagine it the Muspah, it only dropped the Venator Shard basically, and maybe Ancient Essence. That actually create an economy where it's like, okay, if people don't want to kill it for the consistent money, they would obviously stop killing it, and then the price of like those uniques would go up, and they'd balance themselves out. And theoretically, that can apply to every single like PVM content in the game. But in reality, like sometimes we want to make uniques pretty rare, and if a player comes away from an evening like in like 6-10 hours and they don't get anything useful, it just doesn't feel very good. So that's where like other uniques come in that are maybe slightly more common, or like they have resource drops. If every boss drops loads of resources, then resources aren't worth anything, and then no boss is profitable. Like Muspah made other bosses worse, right? Like Muspah being like 3 mil an hour in resources devalued itself over time when it's like 2 million an hour, and then it also devalued previous bosses before that, right? So like just chucking resources onto everything isn't a good solution. We've talked about a lot about this internally, and like some of the better solutions are like introducing new resources, but introducing new things into our game can sometimes be quite time consuming and laborious. Like even it's like Ancient Essence is a new resource, right? That has a lot of value because we made the Saturated Heart. But that requires us to add the Saturated Heart and obviously Ancient Essence and pull it and communicate it all, etc., etc. It just adds a lot of extra overhead, but I do think that's generally the better solution. This is obviously, I could ramble about like economy problems in RuneScape for ages, but we don't have very many sinks of things in our game. Like people don't really use items. Like people complaining about chip damage is kind of part of that, right? Like we need people to use items. Bosses need to consume resources. You need to consume super combats and food and prayer potions and everything that generally goes into PVM. Blood runes for your scythe, etc. If you don't consume anything, then the economy doesn't work. But players don't really like consuming stuff either. So it's an awkward balance. There's problems. We have solutions. It's not easy. It's long-winded. But we're aware of them. But yeah, in terms of actually answering the question, because I don't think I actually did, trying to find a middle ground between guaranteed profits of bosses like Muspah and the current drop tables. Muspah only had a fairly weak unique on it. So I think it needed a bit more regular resources. I think in hindsight it had too many. But at the end of the day, the bosses need to be somewhat rewarding. So yeah, it probably shouldn't be as profitable as Muspah. I think the DT2 drop tables are in the right direction. I know people hate getting bronze javelins, but the uniques of those bosses are worth so much right now. And I think they'll be worth a lot for a long time.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, Arcane. All right, another question about hard mode bosses, or Awakened version, should I say. Is there any thought around adding replayability to Awakened versions of the bosses? Hard mode bosses are a really neat option and a bonus challenge, but not being any more rewarding gives little reason to continue to farm them. Yeah.
I think they sit better as like a cosmetic only reward, really. I don't think personally they'll hold up after killing them 100 times, and I don't really want to incentivize players to play content that isn't as fun. I know people appreciate the challenge and stuff, but yeah, you can kill them. They do have a better they do have a better unique rate than the regular ones. So if you really want to farm for uniques, then you'll get more uniques per kills doing those. But obviously they take a bit longer to kill. You can decide when the drop rates come out whether it's actually worth your time.
Cool. Awesome. All right. You know what? Production, just to mix things up, because I feel like people might have more to say about the last one. We'll go to the last question now, and then we'll do the next question last. So sorry to make things difficult. Right. So second to last question. The super accessible Lightbearer ring from TOA seems to be very strong, still outclassing the new upgraded rings in certain areas of the game. Is the team happy with how that item compares to the new rewards?
I mean,
I've seen
different,
like
right?
Yeah. I've seen the meme suggestions of people being like, can we have a Lightbearer's whatever the hell rings, and like combining the new rings with Lightbearer? But yeah, that's definitely not happening. It's just cool to like do something a little bit different every once in a while. Although the Lightbearer is pretty strong. It doesn't give you any stats, it just gives you a special attack, so yeah. It's cool to have like best in slots and then like special effect type rings and items in general.
Cool. Yeah. Any more from you, Arcane or Ed, or is that?
Yeah, I don't know. Like we released new best in slot like stat rings. If you don't care about the stats based on your current setup or like whatever content you're doing, then use Lightbearer. Like that's a good thing that it's a choice, right? Like isn't that like what good itemization is? That you want to be able to choose between rewards? Wouldn't it be kind of lame if you felt forced to use the range ring and everywhere you used range? Like it's kind of what a Berserker ring is right now, right? Or now Lealta ring. Like it's a good thing that they're both useful items.
Yep. Well said. Well said. All right. We've got a final question then. And this asked, were any of the JMods able to complete all 4 Awakened bosses? How is content so difficult tested?
I've got a
like
two-part
yeah,
answer.
First time.
Yeah.
Go on, Bruno.
So I don't know for sure, but I know for a fact Mod Nox, who's an absolute gamer, did kill some of the Awakened bosses. So yeah, there's that. And as for how do we test stuff that's really difficult, obviously not everyone who works at Jagex can do like solo TOB or Inferno or any sort of that stuff, so there's always going to be like really difficult content that people who work on the game don't know how to test or don't know how to like do without cheats. But in our test environment, we've got all sorts of cheats. We can make it so that if we want, we take no damage. Like damage is still there, but your HP is still full. We basically just want to make sure that the mechanics are working as intended, and as players of the game ourselves, do these mechanics make sense and can they be like dodged and stuff like that. So overall, I don't think the difficulty of the content is too much when we have these sorts of cheats, so we can still like go through it.
Cool. Did you want to say anything else, Arcane, or?
No, you pretty much covered it. Yeah, I think something that was funny for me when I was watching the streams though is that, like for example, on Vardorvis, like since I primarily developed all of that boss, like I know things that the players don't from like the dev point of view since I like coded like all of it. So then you know like tips and tricks that the players like you take for granted, right? And the players don't immediately see. Even if it's just like the specific hitboxes and exactly when certain damage is calculated. Obviously, players are just going off like animations and stuff for a while. eventually people figure it out, right? And then everyone knows exactly what tick the damage comes out. But watching day one especially is just quite interesting in that regard. Challenging assumptions.
Yeah, indeed. Very entertaining to watch, I must say, especially from the perspective of, you know, us that work on the game. It's always interesting watching content from that perspective. All right, nice. We got through all the main questions, even with starting late and me messing up the first launch of the stream. So pretty decent, I'd say. We're going to go through the announcements again, and then we're going to wrap up the stream. So, exclamation mark game update. Desert Treasure 2, The Fallen Empire is here. The biggest and most ambitious quest to date is now live. Head over to the Ancient Vault northeast of Nada to get started, as long as you meet the requirements. Exclamation mark video. We partnered with the smooth-voiced Poison Potion to give you a lore recap about Desert Treasure 2, so you can find out more about Zarus and the Majora in this video. Exclamation mark rings. If you are unsure on how the DT2 rings drop, there's a nice little explainer video from Mod Aiza in the previous stream there. And finally, exclamation mark roadmap. We've just updated this with Deadman Apocalypse release date. For those of you who want to put the time aside to play following the initial launch weekend. So save the date August 25th, which is not too far away now. Yeah, I will say that's pretty much a wrap. I will say, is there any final words from you, Mod Ed?
No. Go play the quest.
There you go. Anything from you, Bruno?
Yeah, go do the quest, kill the bosses, tag me if you get a cool drop. Yeah, that's all.
Well said. And finally, Arcane, any final words?
Since I've been tagged about like 30 times, yeah, the perfect kill mechanics, I can confirm if you do the boss perfectly correctly, you get a 50% increase in regular loot. It is currently bugged on Whisperer. I couldn't see any issues with Leviathan. I'm pretty sure it's working correctly on Vardorvis and Duke. But if you do see any discrepancies, do let me know.
Awesome. So you heard it here first. All right. Yeah, I've been your host, Mods Sarnie, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of the week. And we will see you next week. Goodbye.